In the vast waters of the Indian Ocean lies an island so isolated that approaching its shores is illegal. Satellite images reveal dense forests and pristine beaches, yet almost nothing is known about the people who live there. It is one of the last places on Earth completely untouched by the modern world. North Sentinel Island rises from the Bay of Bengal, set apart within the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, far from the bustle of mainland India. The island covers nearly 60 square kilometers, its dense rainforest bordered by a narrow, treacherous coral reef. Though satellites can pinpoint its location with precision, every approach is stopped not by geography alone, but by a boundary that is both physical and human. The Sentinelese, who call this place home, have made their intentions clear for generations. Outsiders are not welcome. Attempts to land or even draw near are met with a determined defense. Their isolation is not a relic of the past, but a living choice, renewed with each passing year. Modern laws reinforce that boundary, but the real barrier remains the will of the people themselves. In telling this story, no individual will be named, shown, or pursued. The privacy and autonomy of the Sentinelese are not just protected by law, they are respected as a matter of principle. The island is mapped, but its heart remains closed to the world. A ring of coral encircles North Sentinel Island like a living wall stretching 200 meters from shore at its widest. For any vessel, the reef is an immediate hazard. Hidden shoals, shifting sandbars, and sudden shallows can tear open a hull long before land comes into view. The water, turquoise and deceptively calm, conceals a maze that only the tides reveal. Even if a boat manages to find a gap, the reward is a strip of narrow beach, hemmed in by forest that rises almost straight from the sand. There are no open fields, no welcoming harbors, just a dense tangle of trees and undergrowth that presses against the coastline, leaving little room for movement or shelter. Satellite images show how the island's rainforest stretches unbroken to the water's edge, a canopy so thick that sunlight struggles to reach the ground. The forest is not just a backdrop, it is a barrier of roots, vines, and towering trunks, making any overland travel slow and punishing. Occasional clearings appear near the shore, likely the work of the Sentinelese who use these spaces to launch canoes or gather resources. But these are few and fleeting, reclaimed by the jungle with each passing season. Here, remoteness is not an abstract idea, but a reality built into every meter of terrain. The coral reef, the dense forest, and the lack of safe landing sites combine to make the island naturally fortified. This geography does more than keep outsiders away. It allows the Sentinelese to live on their own terms, shaping a world where the outside is always held at bay. The island's environment and its people's isolation are intertwined, each reinforcing the other, preserving a way of life that remains almost entirely untouched by the modern world. In the late 19th century, British colonial officers set their sights on North Sentinel Island. Maurice Vidal Portman, a naval officer and self-styled ethnographer, led several expeditions to the island in the 1880s. His approach reflected the era's imperial mindset, treating the Sentinelese as subjects for study rather than as a people to be left undisturbed. Portman's field diaries and the photographs he deposited in London's archives became the first written and visual records from the island. Yet, they reveal more about colonial ambition than about the Sentinelese themselves. Each attempt to step ashore was met with arrows and silence. The islanders melted into the forest, refusing any gesture of friendship or inquiry. The colonial archive, filled with notes and images, stands as a record of intrusion and frustration. Instead of knowledge, these early encounters produced a pattern. Outsiders arrive with plans and expectations, only to be turned away by a boundary that cannot be crossed by force or curiosity. In 1967, the Anthropological Survey of India began a new chapter in the story of North Sentinel Island. Under the guidance of T.N. Pandit, these missions left behind the heavy-handed tactics of the colonial era and adopted a careful, measured approach. Anthropologists and officials traveled by boat, never landing uninvited, choosing instead to leave gifts, coconuts, metal tools, sometimes even a live pig, on the sand at a safe distance. Observation replaced intrusion. The team watched from the edge of the reef, noting how the Sentinelese responded. Most encounters ended the same way. The islanders collected what they wanted, ignored what they did not, and melted back into the forest, their intentions unreadable. A single moment stands apart from decades of cautious attempts. In 1991, a shoreline meeting unfolded without arrows or shouts. For the first and only time on record, the Sentinelese accepted coconuts directly from Pandit's hand. The exchange was brief and wordless, a fleeting pause in a long history of refusal. Yet even this peaceful gesture did not open the island. The Sentinelese soon withdrew, and the pattern of distance resumed. The lesson was clear: a respectful approach could avoid violence, but it could not bridge the gulf. The Sentinelese remained determined to decide the terms of any encounter, and the island's silence endured. After the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, the first question was whether the Sentinelese had survived the devastation. Indian authorities sent a helicopter to survey the island from the air, keeping a careful distance. The response came quickly. A lone figure appeared on the beach, bow drawn, firing arrows at the aircraft. The message was unmistakable. The outside world was still unwelcome, even in the wake of disaster. No landing was attempted, and the helicopter withdrew, leaving the island's fate to its own people. In 2006, 2 fishermen drifted into the exclusion zone while harvesting lobsters. Their boat ran aground on the reef, and by morning, both men were dead. The Indian Coast Guard recovered their bodies without stepping onto the island. The incident led to renewed enforcement of the exclusion zone and legal penalties for those who enabled the breach. 12 years later, in 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chow paid local fishermen to take him past the legal boundary. He set foot on the beach, hoping to make contact. Within hours, he was killed. The fishermen who ferried him were arrested, and the world's media turned its attention to the island once again. Each of these episodes, recorded in court documents, official reports, and news headlines, underscores the same reality. The Sentinelese have not changed their answer. No matter how much the world advances, the boundary remains, and every attempt to cross it ends the same way. India's legal framework draws a clear line around North Sentinel Island, a 5-kilometer exclusion zone that no one may cross without government approval. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Regulation, first enacted in 1956, makes unauthorized entry a criminal offense. This is not a symbolic gesture. The boundary is actively enforced by the Indian Coast Guard and Navy, whose patrols and surveillance keep the island off limits to tourists, fishermen, and even researchers. The law is designed to protect both the Sentinelese and those who might be tempted to approach. The primary concern is not violence, but disease. Isolated for thousands of years, the Sentinelese have no immunity to illnesses that are common elsewhere. The history of the Andaman Islands is a stark warning. In the 19th century, the Great Andamanese population fell from over 5,000 to just a few dozen after the arrival of measles, influenza, and other infections. Even in recent years, outbreaks among neighboring tribes have led to hospitalizations and deaths. In 2020, COVID-19 reached the Great Andamanese, infecting nearly a fifth of their remaining community. Epidemiological models predict that a single case of measles or influenza could kill a third of the Sentinelese within weeks. This is why the exclusion zone exists, not as a relic of colonial control, but as a shield against catastrophe. The law reflects a broader ethical stance, one echoed by experts in anthropology, linguistics, and public health. Vishwajit Pandya, a leading scholar of the Andaman tribes, writes that the Sentinelese have exercised an unequivocal right to remain uncontacted. Any breach would be a violation of their collective autonomy. Linguist Anvita Abbey warns that introducing pathogens to a population with no immunological memory is ethically comparable to a biological weapon. Anthropologist Madhumala Chattopadhyay, who once met the Sentinelese peacefully, later reflected that the safest and most respectful policy is non-intervention. For the Sentinelese, the right to isolation is not just a matter of law or science, it is a matter of survival. From a distance, science can offer only a partial glimpse into the world of North Sentinel Island. Careful aerial surveys and remote imaging suggest a community of about 50 to 60 people. But these numbers are estimates, not a true census. The forest canopy hides more than it reveals. At times, clearings appear near the shore, and the outlines of dugout canoes can be traced along the water's edge. These signs point to a hunter-gatherer life, marked by movement between beach and forest, the gathering of tubers, and fishing from the reef. Yet every observation is filtered through layers of distance, satellite pixels, fleeting glimpses from passing boats, the limits of a telephoto lens. The tools of modern science, satellite imagery, aerial counts, and pattern recognition can detect where the forest thins or where a path leads to the sea. They can suggest how the Sentinelese use their island, but they cannot answer deeper questions. The language spoken in the forest remains unrecorded. The ties of kinship, the shape of ritual, the rules that bind the community. These are mysteries that no remote sensor can resolve. Even the structure of daily life is inferred, pieced together from patterns of movement and changes in the landscape rather than direct knowledge. What is known about the Sentinelese is built on careful inference. What remains unknown is vast. Each technological advance sharpens the outlines of the island, but leaves its heart untouched. The boundary between knowledge and mystery endures, reminding us that some worlds are defined not by what we see, but by what we cannot reach. North Sentinel Island stands as a living reminder, even in an age of satellites and global access, true mysteries endure. Its exclusion zone holds more than a boundary. It protects a human story still unfolding on its own terms. Some places teach us the value of leaving questions unanswered.